Greetings, welcome brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Today's video is about the origins of the acting white charge. School integration yielded a disturbing byproduct, a psychological association between scholastic achievement and whiteness. And while I read those words to you, I have to tell you it's very disturbing when we associate achievement of any kind with whiteness. But that's what this video is about. So with further ado, classroom integration wasn't an entirely positive development for black educational prospects. That argument, completely out of vogue, needs airing amid our reacquaintance with the busing controversy of 50 years ago, when Senator Kamala Harris exposed Vice President Joe Biden's opposition to federally mandated busing in the early 1970s, progressives congratulated her, and that's understandable. Busing fostered the integration that many districts resisted even after the Supreme Court in Brown versus Board of Education rejected the separate but equal doctrine, which had condemned so many black kids to substandard schooling. Thorough studies have confirmed that busing improved the scholarly performance of countless black kids. And family, I wanted you to pay attention to this picture because not only are these kids clearly saying that they want a white school, but I want you to notice all the Confederate flags of these little monsters hating on another group of people that they have no idea about. So there are black people who go around parading in their Confederate flag clothes and, just thinking that they're the smartest things on the planet, saying how the Confederate flag doesn't really mean anything racist. But yet these little devils here are clearly showing their hatred and how they are opposed to integrating with any other group of people in their schools, clearly by the sign that they have right in this picture. But I digress. Certainly the underfunded one-room schoolhouses in the Old South had to go. Something else had to go too, though. The idea that any black student is only being properly served if white kids are studying next to them. That misimpression, fostered by the school integration movement, has yielded a disturbing byproduct, a harmful psychological association between scholastic achievement and whiteness. So many on the left dismiss as a racist fable the notion that black teens often say their pert, nerdy peers are, quote, acting white, bristling to even read it mentioned in pieces like this, claiming the whole scenario has been refuted. Deniers even lit into President Barack Obama for his famous line about the black kid with a book in his hand being called white. And family, I'm going to stop right there for a second and just say that I recall back in my school days of being called white or trying to act white because I like to read. I have to tell you, especially for my young brothers and sisters out there in this day and age, the best thing you can do in your life for yourself is to pick up a book and read. You will gain so much knowledge. And as people have said and stated, it's very true. Knowledge is power, and it can be power depending on the knowledge that you gain. So I would suggest that you seek the right type of knowledge. If you want me to expound on that, I can do that in another video, but for now, I would just say to you, don't listen to those peers. Don't listen to those voices, to those trolls out there who try to make fun of you for liking to read. For that matter, if it's so embarrassing, if it's embarrassing to you, keep that to yourself. Nobody needs to know that you like to read anyways. But you will do yourself a tremendous, tremendous favor. Mark those words. But I digress. In fact, family, this charge grew out of the integration era, as Stuart Buck documents in his book Acting White, The Ironic Legacy of Desegregation. Many black students placed in previously all-white schools encountered white teachers either overtly or covertly hostile to their presence, at best thinking of them as hopeless prospects for success. Many of the white students, while hardly as starkly belligerent toward them as the sneering kids in photographs of Little Rock Central High School, were distinctly unwelcoming to the new black kids in countless other ways. This will surprise few of us today, of course, and it was hardly limited to the South. Recall the famous shot of the angry white woman at the meeting on busing in Boston. The pic she displayed did not magically evaporate once black kids were settled into these white schools. It became the substrate of the black kids' new schoolroom experience week in and week out. That kind of rejection can make a person disidentify from a whole environment, and one result was a sense that school was for white kids, something outside of the authentic black experience. In other words, family, many black kids, and even today, look at school as something that white people do. They don't look at school as something that black people really should get into, while I have to say that school is there for you to get an education, and if you don't get an education, you really can't survive in this capitalistic country. So I would suggest that while you might not like the curriculum as they lied about everything, I would say get your money, get that paper. In other words, get that document, get that degree, so that you can call your own shots. Even if it means immediately going into business for yourself. You're going to need some information on business. You're going to need information on taxes. You're going to need information on different things to have a successful business. So while there's some black folks who will turn their nose up at the idea of going to a college or going to a school to get a degree in this, that, or the other type of area that you are interested in, I'd say that you still need that piece of paper in order to succeed one way or another. So I went off of what I was trying to stick with, so let me get back to exactly what I was saying. In this piece, what's interesting is how they're relating scholastic achievement with whiteness and saying that it's just not authentic for black people. Over time, open white resistance to black kids in these schools receded as attitudes on race changed. However, a cultural meme casting school as, quote, white has set in and has become self-perpetuating since. In other words, people always associate school and scholastic achievement with whiteness. That's just how it is. It's a stereotype. Nonetheless, people look at it that way. The same way they look at Asians and achievement. Because white people have pushed that stereotype, Asians even feel pressured because they say that that's a stereotype that's just simply not true. Even though you might feel that many more Asians are smart, that's one thing. But to say that all of them, as a group of them, are smarter than anyone else, well, that's a stretch. But anyways, the acting white charge can thrive even in extravagantly funded schools where non-white teachers are as exquisitely sensitized about racism as humans can be, quite unlike the nasty, dismissive teachers that black kids encountered decades ago. So it may seem counterintuitive that the quote acting white meme would persist beyond what caused it, but this is how cultural memes can work. A useful analogy would be the wariness some black people retain even today of hospitals, a legacy of the Tuskegee experiment during which researchers left black men's syphilis untreated. You all remember that. Teens of all stripes seek ways of defining their subgroup, fostering a sense of group membership and even of acting out. A meme can be especially tenacious when it is useful for other purposes. In black teen culture, one way of doing this is to embrace the idea that studying is white. Sure, white kids get made fun of for being nerds too, but as Kimberly Norwood has deftly gotten across in her study of the whole acting white charge, it's one thing to be called a nerd, another to be told you are disqualifying yourself from your race. That lends a particular sting, and I'm sure many of you have heard that too. People have heard that many times, black people in particular, when you have a certain talent. They say how that you're credit to your race and all this and that and the other. But they don't say that about their own. Go figure. But anyways, those who deny the continued association of whiteness in school note, for example, that black kids do not say outright to interviewers that they devalue school, consider it white, or dislike smart black peers. Studies show that if you ask black kids whether they value school, they say yes. But issues of racial identity are subtle. The sociologists, educators, and journalists who point to studies like this would laugh out of the room a paper claiming that you can identify, for example, people's inner racism by asking them about it. Well, more useful is a rarely addressed study by Clifton Castile from 1997 in which white 8th and ninth graders tended to say they did homework for their parents, while black kids said they did homework for their teachers. That is, they had a quiet sense that school was not for what, quote, we are at heart, or Harvard's Roland Fryer has shown that while the number of white kids who report another white kid as a friend increases with that kid's GPA, the number of black kids who report another black kid as a friend increases with GPA at a much lower rate, and then plummets after 3.5. Fryer even notes that it is specifically black kids who give evidence of putting in special effort who have fewer friends, not the ones who manage to excel while making it look easy. Add this to the body of research, the decades of journalism on how black kids are tormented as, quote, white for liking school up to the present day. John Ogbu wrote a book carefully documenting the association in Shakur Heights, Ohio. After I wrote a book in 2000 with a chapter addressing it, I received unsolicited well over 100 letters from black people explicitly attesting that they were teased as white for liking school, many saying that their grades went down as a result, as well as from concerned teachers wondering what to do about black kids telling them that this charge was being lobbed at them. One letter writer said black kids called him a nerd in the early 1960s because he liked school, but that they called his younger siblings, quote, white for the same reason by the end of that decade. So Family, this is a very interesting dichotomy that we're talking about here, where unfortunately black kids who are trying to excel, who are trying to show black excellence, what our great ancestors once did and once achieved highest, to the highest known to man. And right to this day, we have so-called parents who won't motivate or inspire their kids to even pick up a book. Instead, you want them to pick up a ball and dribble it and just shut up like Laura Ingraham asked. I say that in jest and pun intended because, family, I once went through this myself, and I know that I'm not the only one, where we have black peers, our friends, and even sometimes family members who say we're trying to be white just because we're trying to educate ourselves, especially knowing that this so-called educational system has stacked all the cards against us. It's to our benefit to pick up a book and find out the truth on our own. But do we do that? No, because we have some black people who are dumb, stupid, and retarded, and they want you to be in the same car as them. That's not what this video is about. This video is saying hell to the fucking no to that. It's saying black man, black woman, black youth, pick up a book and read it. But read something that's going to benefit you. So what would I suggest? Well, I would suggest the main thing that's been written about over most all of the temples in ancient Kemet, that is to know thyself. So pick up a book about black history. Start from there. And if you've already started reading, if you haven't already, I definitely suggest. No, I'm not even going to do that. There's other videos where I suggested books already. So what I would do is suggest and recommend that you check out some of my older videos, and then you'll get an idea of the books I'm talking about. So let's continue. Well, deniers like to cite a study by Carolyn Tyson, William Darity Jr., and Domini Castellino, who found that the acting white charge mostly flares up in integrated schools, in which socioeconomic status differences between blacks and whites are stark and perceived as corresponding to patterns of placement and achievement. But why dismiss something that happens only with kids in integrated schools? If anything, this study neatly confirms the acting white phenomenon. To wit, black nerds get called white when white kids are around to furnish a basis for the comparison. The problem arises, the misintegration. And of course, basically what they're saying is that when you have a black person next to a nerdy white person to compare them to, it's easy to make the correlation if you feel it necessary, but also it's just used as a weapon against, well, their insecurities and your low self-esteem. That's all it's used for. But I digress. The weight of studies, reports, and testimonials on acting white is so crushing that the indignant resistance from some can seem almost peculiar. It is rooted in a discomfort with a black problem being traced to something other than racism, with the sense that black kids are being pathologized, as it is often put. However, these people need not worry that the quote acting white issue interferes with their paradigm. The sense of school as white was sparked quite directly by racism, such as that of the whites famous for their opposition to busing. None of this is to imply that the continuing white-black educational achievement gap is the result of black kids calling each other names, or to minimize the very real effects of funding disparities, historical inequities, and the like. My point is simply that school desegregation made a lot of black kids see school as, quote, white, which can perhaps be classified as collateral damage, given the educational improvements it lent to so many others. However, such an unpleasant and counterproductive side effect is a useful lesson, peddling or prodding us to focus not only on desegregation, but on making all black classrooms good ones. Underlying all the praise directed at Senator Harris is the quiet assumption that something is fundamentally wrong with an all-black classroom. So the question is there? After emancipation, ex-slaves clamored for education. Much of the civil rights mission of the late 19th century was centered on building schoolhouses for black people. Even in 1899, students at all-black Dunbar High in Washington, D.C. were outscoring white students across town. Wait, let me read that again because I really want you to hear and understand this, black people. Even in 1899, students at an all-black Dunbar High in Washington, D.C. were outscoring white students across town, while all-black schools in many other cities were similarly excellent. So, family, our black schools before integration were doing better than the white schools. Do you hear me? The black schools were doing better than the white schools. And who asked for integration? But I digress. Black Brooklynites had PS 91. You would never know from the situation depicted in the 4th season of The Wire that in the old days, black kids in Baltimore had the top class Frederick Douglass High. By no means were these flagship schools the whole picture of black education before Brown. Legal segregation was an urgent civil rights crisis. Still, all black must not necessarily mean all bad. That is a perception that we must change immediately. Data are piling up on what makes for a good school, and racial diversity is not the best, let alone the only answer. Reading should be taught via phonics, not exploration. Teach for America has gathered data revealing just what makes for a good teacher, even to poor students, including careful attention to the abilities of each student, fostering parental involvement, and the I do, we do, you do method of imparting skills. First, via demonstration, next involving the whole class, then assigning each student to do it alone. Education must focus less on socio-political ideology and more on the nuts and bolts of school teaching, such as creating a curriculum and maintaining order. Teachers' unions should be more open to longer school days. The idea of school ending for the summer so that kids can help their parents with the harvest must be rethought, of course, which also underscores the importance that schools always be air-conditioned. President Barack Obama condemned, quote, the slander that says that a black youth with a book is acting white, unquote. But that slander didn't exist in the old days and need not exist today. We just have to get past an unintended variant kind of slander, assuming that a black youth has a book because he goes to school with whites. That is far from the truth. Desegregation forever indeed, but let's not forget that lots of learning can go on in all black schools as well. Family, this article was actually written by a brother named John McWhorter, who teaches linguistics at Columbia University, and he also hosts a podcast called Lexicon Valley, and he's also an author of, most recently, of the book called Words on the Move. Anyways, I thought that was a very clever way of ending with the words, but let's not forget that lots of learning can go on in all black schools as well. Well, we obviously know that. That's why we have HBCUs. So with that, I want to end it off there. I think this article, sticking to the point of the acting white charge, is a very clear and concise point. That's what this video is about. If you missed that point, I'm making it clear now. This video is clearly about the charge from one black person to another that you're, quote, acting white, unquote, if you're trying to do good for yourself, i.e. reading a book, going to school, getting an education, or just trying to achieve. I think that is something we definitely must change. And I think we're already doing that. Black people are resilient and smart. Anyways, thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for tuning in for this particular video, because I have made it quite long, longer than I normally would, but I thought it was a very interesting subject when I came across it, and I wanted to share it with you. So, without further ado, I'm gonna chill, leave this video. I'll leave you to the comment section. We'll see you in the next video. Peace out.